A deer dies in a forest, and the herd keeps walking. A lion dies on the savannah, and the pride moves on by morning. A fish dies in a river, and the river just carries it away. Every species on this planet has the same simple relationship with a dead body: you leave it. And then there's us. We wash them, we dress them, we put them in a box, we put the box in the ground, and then we come back years later and we talk to the ground. We've been doing versions of this for a very long time, longer than religion, longer than farming, longer than writing, possibly longer than our own species has existed. So the real question isn't what ancient humans did when someone died. It's why they ever started. Start in northern Spain in a cave system called Atapuerca. Deep at the back, there's a vertical shaft, 13 meters straight down. Archaeologists call it the Pit of Bones. At the bottom, they found at least 28 people, not our species, an older kind of human, 430,000 years ago. And here's what's strange about it: there are almost no animal bones down there, no tools, no sign that anyone ever lived in that chamber, just people, 28 of them at the bottom of a hole in the dark. Bodies don't collect like that by accident. And there was one other thing in the pit: a single handaxe cut from a reddish stone that doesn't appear anywhere else at the site. Beautifully made, never used, the excavators nicknamed it Excalibur. So somebody carried a body to the edge of that shaft and dropped in something beautiful after it. That's 200,000 years before our species existed. Now go to cave in northern Iraq, Shanidar. In the 1950s, archaeologists pulled 10 Neanderthals out of the ground there. One of them they nicknamed Nandi. Nandi was wrecked, his right arm was withered and had probably been amputated above the elbow. He was blind in one eye. He'd taken a crushing blow to the side of his skull and was almost certainly deaf on that side. He had degenerative damage in both legs. And he lived like that for years. Sit with what that means. This is the Pleistocene. He couldn't hunt, he couldn't run, he couldn't fight, he couldn't carry anything. So somebody fed him for years. For nothing. And then there's Shanidar 4. When they analyzed the soil around that body, they found dense clumps of pollen, not scattered grains, whole flower heads in the grave. Ralph Solke called it the flower burial, and it went around the world. Because before you can bury someone, you have to care about them while they're still alive. Shanidar is the oldest evidence we have that somebody did. South Africa, a cave system called Rising Star. In 2013, cavers found bones in a chamber deep inside it. The species turned out to be completely new. They called it Homo naledi, somewhere between 250 and 335,000 years old. Here's the part that matters: its brain was about 500 cubic centimeters, roughly a third the size of yours. And the chamber those bones are in is almost impossible to reach. The final squeeze is about 17 centimeters wide. The excavation team had to be recruited by body size. Nothing drags a body up there, no flood carries a body up there. In 2023, Lee Berger's team argued that the bodies had been put there deliberately, and that there were marks carved into the walls. I'll be straight with you, that claim got taken apart in peer review. It is genuinely disputed. But if it holds, it means you don't need a big brain to bury your dead. You just need to be unable to walk away. Now the one that gets me. Sungir, Russia, 34,000 years ago, the middle of an ice age. 2 children buried head to head, covered in more than 10,000 beads. Every single one carved by hand, out of mammoth ivory. Next to them, spears made from mammoth tusks that had somehow been straightened, belts strung with hundreds of drilled Arctic fox teeth. Archaeologists have tried to reproduce those beads. Estimates run from about 15 minutes to an hour each. So do the maths: 10,000 beads, somewhere between 2,500 and 10,000 hours of work. These people were cold, they were hungry, they lived hand to mouth on a frozen steppe. And they spent something close to a year of a human life decorating 2 children who were already dead. Come forward to about 9,000 years ago, Çatalhöyük in Turkey, one of the first towns anywhere on Earth. They didn't carry their dead outside the settlement. They buried them inside the houses, under the floors, directly beneath the platforms people slept on. They slept on top of their grandparents for generations. And at Jericho they went further. They took the skull off the body, then they rebuilt the face on it in plaster, cheeks, nose, mouth, and they pressed seashells into the eye sockets. And then they kept it in the house. Kathleen Kenyon pulled the first one out of the ground in 1953 and realized she was holding a face. They weren't hiding the dead, they were keeping them. None of this is fringe. Ralph Solke, Juan Luis Arzuaga, Kathleen Kenyon, Ian Hodder, who spent 3 decades at Çatalhöyük. These are the people who built modern archaeology. And the pattern running through all of their work is the same. Every time somebody digs deeper, the date moves backwards. 50 years ago, the story was that burial arrived with agriculture. Then it got pushed back into the Upper Paleolithic, then to the Neanderthals, then to 90,000 years ago at Eskil and Kafse, where bodies were found holding a boar's jaw and a set of deer antlers. And now maybe to a pit in Spain that predates us completely. Nobody set out to prove this, the dates just kept sliding. Okay, now let me take all of that apart. The flowers were probably a rodent. In 1999, Jeffrey Sommer pointed out that a burrowing gerbil called the Persian jerd lives in that region, and it hoards flower heads in its tunnels. The most famous funeral in human prehistory may have been a rodent's pantry. The pit of bones might just be a pit, it could be a natural death trap, bodies could have washed in, Excalibur could be a handaxe somebody dropped. Homo naledi, like I said, didn't survive review. And grief isn't even ours. Chimpanzee mothers have been documented carrying the mummified bodies of their dead infants for months, grooming them, keeping the flies off. Elephants stop at the bones of other elephants and turn them over with their trunks, and they only do it for elephants. And honestly, the boring explanation for burial is almost certainly the right one. A body rots, rot brings hyenas to where your children sleep. Rot gets into the water, burying your dead isn't spiritual, it's sanitation. But look at what that actually means. If burial started as sanitation, then we were performing the ritual for 100,000 years before we had any reason for it. We didn't invent the meaning and then build a funeral around it. We invented the funeral and then went looking for a meaning to put inside. There's one thing sanitation can't explain, and once you see it, you can't stop seeing it at every single one of these sites. They packed them things. Excalibur went into the pit. Red ochre went onto the bodies, the color of blood. A boar's jaw was placed into the hands of a body at Eskil 90,000 years ago. Deer antlers were laid across a body at Kafse. Tools, food, weapons. And 10,000 mammoth ivory beads on 2 children in an ice age. Hygiene doesn't need beads. Hygiene doesn't need red paint. Hygiene doesn't need a spear. You only pack a bag for someone who's going somewhere. That's the part we still can't explain away, not the burying, the packing. Because somewhere in the last 500,000 years, a human being looked down at a body that had stopped moving and decided that the person was still in there, still going, and would need things when they arrived. We don't know when that happened, we don't know who was first or what they thought was waiting. The archaeology gives us the objects, it doesn't give us the moment. We can date the beads to the year, we can tell you what the ivory came from and how many hours it took to carve. We can't tell you what the person holding it believed. That part didn't fossilize. So here we are. A species that buries its dead, packs them a bag for a journey nobody has ever come back from, and still can't explain, 400,000 years later, why it ever started.